Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be, of course, taking a look at the very important and much awaited conclusion of the talks between the IMF and, of course, Pakistan. And we've had these going on from January 31st to the 9th of Feb. And the finance minister also clarified the speculations made with regards to Pakistan receiving the memorandum for economic and financial policies, which, of course, is the step forward before we can reach a staff level agreement regarding the extended fund facility, and then, of course, the much awaited tranche that will be received by Pakistan within this program. And that, of course, is important in terms of the current economic crisis and the all-time low foreign reserves that we have. This is also in importance with regards to the kind of political situation the country has been facing for quite some time now, and how question marks regarding the credibility of the current policies and directions taken by the political setup have also been questioned. And then, of course, the finance ministry and its measures with regards to discussions with the IMF. But the finance minister, Aqdas, was hopeful and positive regarding the conclusion, and also talked about how after the following of the MEF, this is going to be something that is going to be discussed virtually with the IMF leaders. And once that is finalized, we will be seeing the next step very soon within Pakistan. Of course, this does require some fundamental changes and reforms that the IMF has been asking Pakistan to do. And the finance minister was of the opinion that this is the requirement of the country as well. So it will be a positive step forward for Pakistan to be able to achieve that. There are, of course, tough measures for the country and will, of course, add to the suffering of the people, but the government will do its best to provide concessions to the poor segments of the society and be able to move ahead with the kind of plan and detail that has been discussed with the IMF. What, of course, entails this particular program and how exactly the government and how soon will these steps be measured and then, of course, taken care of is something that still remains to be seen. But for now, the talks have concluded. We have the MEFP and the virtual discussions are going to continue. So we'll look at further detail as to what this means in terms of the timeline of the assistance that we're going to get and how soon we'll be able to proceed with the remaining fiscal year with economic policies as per the agreement, and then what that means on ground in terms of the issues that the masses are already faced regarding the economic situation. That's going to be the segment in our first, that's going to be the first segment of our show today. We're also going to be taking a look at the end of the segment with regards to the discussions, of course, around the world in the aftermath of the devastating earthquake that has hit Turkey and Syria. And these two countries, of course, have been suffering in the aftermath of this devastating natural disaster, something that Pakistan is also familiar with. And because of the kind of relationships that we have had with Turkey in the past regarding natural disasters at home as well, Pakistan has stepped up its efforts towards both the countries, in fact, in order to be able to go ahead with the kind of humanitarian requirements on ground. Pakistan, of course, wants to be able to contribute as much as it can, and numerous campaigns have begun all over the country to help in this particular regard. There is also, of course, the increasing death toll, which is impacting and making us understand the scale of the tragedy, and there's much to be done in terms of rehabilitation and relief activities that Pakistan needs to contribute in. So we're going to be taking a look at what are the requirements coming in from these countries and how Pakistan can contribute even further, and what are the measures taken so far. That is going to be our second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, we've been joined by senior analyst Farooq Batafi. We've also been joined online by Dr. Aqdas Afzal, who's a senior economist. Thank you very much, Dr. Aqdas, for being a part of the discussion. And let me start with you, Dr. Sam. When we take a look at the situation of the conclusion of these talks, this is, of course, something that has been motivated, and everybody wanted to hear from the IMF and the finance ministry regarding what sort of agreement has been there. We know, of course, from what the finance minister has stated, that the MEFP has, of course, been received, and then discussions will continue virtually on that. But in so far, the reports that we've been receiving in regarding the fundamental changes that have been talked about with regards to Pakistan taking some serious measures. How soon do you think that this will be implemented, especially after the virtual discussions continue? And then in terms of Pakistan being able to proceed with that, what sort of requirements do you think exist, particularly from the IMF, in terms of the implementation? Since, of course, this means that the situation may change suddenly if all of these measures are implemented at once. Dr. Aqdas, you'll have to unmute yourself. We're unable to hear you. Go ahead.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so thank you for taking me on the show. I think to answer your question, what is it going to take for the IMF to move forward? I think the IMF is basically going to wait for the ordinance through which the government is now going to impose taxes, further taxes of rupees 170 billion. I think they want to see some progress, some tangible progress, before they can move towards what can be called a staff level agreement. Because you may remember that there was a lot of expectation in Pakistan. People thought that before the IMF delegation left, Pakistan would be able to bag a staff level agreement, but that did not come about. But the government was at least able to receive a memorandum of economic and financial policies from the IMF, which is a positive step, which basically means that this program, or getting this tranche back online, is very much on the cards, and that the IMF is going to keep talking to the Ministry of Finance, the government of Pakistan, make sure that Pakistan makes progress in direction of the promises that have been made, and that in a few days, I think about a week or so, we should be in a position to receive this tranche of 1.1 to 1.2 billion dollars, which would culminate as the end of the the ninth review that had been going on in Pakistan. So I think to recap, uh, the IMF wants to see some tangible progress in the direction of goals and promises that have been made. And one of those is going to be a potential ordinance that is going to come around in a few days, that is going to impose new taxes um, that are going to further help this government bridge the fiscal gap, thereby coming up with a primary surplus instead of a deficit. So these are some of the things that have to take place before we can move towards a staff level agreement with the IMF, but it's very much on the cards, and I think it's a matter of a few days.
Right, and also Dr. Aqdas, with regards to these measures being taken immediately as well, of course, when you mentioned the fact that the IMF wants to see some tangible progress in this direction, what would be constituted as tangible when we talk about the measures that have been outlined by the IMF in terms of actually moving forward with this tranche that you were referring to? Because we've been hearing reports coming in as well that perhaps Pakistan initially wanted to be able to spread these measures over the course of some time, so that the measures can be taken at a slow pace. But will that be something that we can do now, or will this be something that has to be done with immediate effect?
And Dr. Saab, would this tangible result or ask include assurances from our other bilateral donors as well, sir?
So I think to answer Farooq Tafi's question first, I think the IMF has already spoken to some of the friendly countries, and these countries have given assurances that once Pakistan gets the staff level agreement or the disbursement of the tranche, they would have no objection to providing Pakistan with the relief that had that this country has been promised for a number of months. So that's to answer the first
Right.
question. To answer the second question that was put up by Sana Makbul, I think unfortunately the nature of these tangible steps that Pakistan is now required to take by the IMF, the nature of these steps has to be immediate. And I think definitely the IMF would like to see um, legislation or an ordinance that is going to give them this idea that Pakistan is serious and that we are going to do our utmost in trying to bridge uh, the fiscal gap to a degree whereby we end up with a primary surplus.
Right. Farooq, when we talk about the ordinance or some sort of legislation in this direction, how will this be worked out in terms of the kind of political dynamics that we've also seen within the country? Is there any necessity of involving all the various stakeholders in this current situation? Or can this be something that the current political setup can just go ahead with and we can have assurances that that's going to remain?
Oh, you mean consensus?
Yes.
You know, that dreaded word, elusive word that
I
we keep
avoided
on running after.
Yes.
And we have been running after for quite some time. Look, in ordinances, the issue is very straightforward. If you want to actually, introduce an ordinance, all you have to do is you need support of the President's office. The law is made and then it is promulgated by the President. So there is, of course, going to be a complication because PTI sees the President as one of their own, and the President recently has come under a lot of pressure also. But I think that when it comes to economy, you don't need any broad-based dialogue. You need broad-based dialogue to actually sustain the ramifications of the harsh measures that you are going to take, and that will include some kind of consultation or tacit agreement or ownership of by PTI as well, which has been elusive. But having said that, the way we keep on handling this issue is amazing. And by we, I don't mean the finance ministry or the government, or for that matter IMF. We know that it was an excruciating dance. It took us 4 months to reach where we are. But the way media actually instinctively tanks everything by you're rooting for some kind of collapse is amazing. The moment the team left, the first headlines that I have started seeing on television was that the talks have collapsed, right? The fact that it took us 4 months to reach here, and there is some merit to the idea that had these policy changes been introduced 4 months ago, circumstances could have been better. But having said that, given that it was excruciating negotiations, the IMF is also going to take some time to agree to all issues, right? And similarly, government of Pakistan is under humongous pressure because of inflation, because of economic conditions as well. So there was going to be, I mean, after this discussion, there was going to be some kind of negotiation later as well. So that will continue. But the draft MEFP has arrived in Pakistan. What we await now after staff level agreement is letter of intent. The moment that comes, things will start looking up, Sana, because all our other donors, our friends are waiting, out of the circle, just waiting for this to actually go through so that they can also come in and rescue the situation. So in the end, let me remind everybody who's listening that while the government could have done it better, could have approached it earlier, but it did whatever was asked. And in the end, there is going to be tangible demands and tangible actions. But once that is done, this deal or agreement will come through, and that will also conclude the program as well. Then we see Miftah Saab's statement that we'll have to once again go to IMF. Of course, that is something that we can handle or talk about when the moment comes. Right now, completion of this program is of utmost importance, because when you leave or you fall through a program that was already in principle agreed, it actually marks you, and then nobody wants to touch you with a barge pole. The way media keeps on scandalizing everything, that creates a negative sentiment. That's why you saw the crash in the stock market as well.
Right. Dr. Aqdas, an important aspect of these discussions is, of course, regarding the energy sector and the circular debt. We've also heard from the finance minister that the government will be minimizing targeted subsidies in the sector. But what does that mean in terms of the way that this is going to be implemented, and what sort of measures would be taken in order to ensure that the circular debt does not increase and in fact comes down as per the plan?
Okay, so I think that part is a very important part of the overall negotiations that took place with the IMF. The IMF has rightly been very concerned with these constant and huge increases in Pakistan's circular debt when it comes to our energy sector. Primarily, these huge um, increases that have been coming about in the gas sector. So they have laid down this condition, and Pakistan has obviously agreed to it, that Pakistan is going to ensure that there are no further increases in the circular debt when it comes to the gas sector. Also, what we are going to do is that we are going to ensure that there are no um, untargeted subsidies, untargeted subsidies being paid when it comes to energy. And so, what is going to happen in the immediate term is that we are going to see an increase in prices of energy, both electricity and gas. So there are various estimations about by how much are these prices going to go up, and unfortunately, that number is rather large. So about 60 to 70% in the case of gas, and about 30 to 40% in the case of electricity. And of course, making or bringing about such large and huge increases when inflation is already hovering at 28% is going to be a very, very tough call, both for the government and for the people of this country. So, so that is a very, very tough task that this government has to now perform in order to make sure that this IMF negotiation becomes successful, and that we are in the position when this program is done in June to be able to negotiate for another program.
Right. Dr. Saab, since you're talking about energy subsidies and how to actually phase them out, let me ask you about something else which is very important. Even despite that, there is a target that you have to actually finish or meet regarding, revenues or inflows. And in that, we had been hearing that there is going to be a super tax which will take care of the matter, one-time tax. But given that, although there is progress there also, that these matters are in court and there is going to be, they have been clubbed together and they will be heard. But because of that bottleneck, there is a possibility, or we keep on hearing that there might be some jacking up of the indirect tax, that is GST, perhaps maybe to 17%, 1% more. Do you think that that is a possible eventuality, sir?
Yes, I am afraid it is because you rightly pointed out that efforts to bring about a one-time super tax have run into problems in the courts. Now, the government has been trying to take care of this situation, but what is going to be the final outcome of something that is sub judice? I think it's anybody's guess. So I think one way around that is to increase, like what you mentioned, general sales tax by a whole percentage point, in order to bridge that revenue gap, which is now becoming very, very important because now we have made some promises to the IMF, and one of those promises is to have a primary surplus. And the only way we can do that is by increasing our revenue collection.
Right. There's also, of course, the issue of how we'll be able to incorporate the dynamics regarding the poor segments of society. We keep on hearing how that the government is going to take care of the common people, but at the same time, like you mentioned earlier, there is the increase in taxes, the inflation is already high, and then the increase in prices in the energy sector is going to impact everybody. And I understand systems like the BISP, but how far can they actually impact this particular issue and to take care of the masses in general? And when we talk about the costs that they'll have to bear, what sort of other protective measures can the government take?
Well, in the current situation, I think BISP is um, really the only targeted program that we have for vulnerable sections of this society. And I'm very happy that at least in these negotiations between the Ministry of Finance, Government of Pakistan, and the IMF, the allocation for Benazir Income Support Program, a social safety program for the most vulnerable sections of Pakistani society, has not gone down. As a matter of fact, it has been increased from
Yes.
360 billion to 400 billion rupees. So I welcome this development. Unfortunately, that's all Pakistan has right now in terms of assisting Pakistani citizens. And I think in this situation, the most important thing is to take care of the vulnerable sections of society. And as the economy hopefully improves in the months to come, then perhaps Pakistan and this government would be in a position to provide some more relief. But for right now, I think there are very few policy options, and Benazir Income Support Program is perhaps the only option available to the government at the moment.
Right. Farooq, we keep on hearing also that this particular program, of course, the timeline is till the end of the fiscal year, and there will be, of course, tough measures and the kind of impact that we're discussing that people will have to bear. But in terms of the tranche that we're receiving and then the expected inflow from friendly countries as well, how much will this contribute towards any sort of pace in terms of economic prosperity, or any sort of way that we can factor in that at least the direction is moving towards betterment and progression? I understand that it's important for us to get this extended fund facility, but in terms of the people also bearing that impact, what timeline is there for that?
Well, right, Sana, I think that the biggest and most vulnerable part is, of course, this fiscal year. When we draw to its conclusion and when we eventually draw to the end of a move towards the end of this program as well. Remember, this program actually, we had to go for it in very eerie circumstances. Even right now, internationally, the economics is bad. On one side, you see economy is heating up, the US, elsewhere. And in Europe, particularly UK, you have seen slowdown already taking, setting in. Because of that and because of that variation in the global markets, there's going to be some pressure. But when we went for this program, at that time, Donald Trump was ruling America. And at that time, if you remember, Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, had actually made a very negative statement also that somehow the money of the American taxpayer will end up with China or something else. Because of that, there were too many inherent, catches, and there were too many controls. We finally got the program, but it was really, really difficult to actually meet. And since we have the habit of dragging our feet, changing our foreign ministers, and then, of course, changing governments also, the circumstances have been thus very complicated. And then COVID also came in. And by the way, in COVID, IMF was very gracious and very kind and really helped us out. But having said that, once this program concludes, there's hope because right now, because IMF is also very aggressive, and we know that in this region, even in India, Bangladesh, there might be a contagion that is affecting. You have seen what is happening with Adani. There's talk of other Indian companies also coming under the microscope. Because of that, the IMF is in a position where it has to be very assertive. And because it is very assertive, Sana, at this moment, this program has to conclude. And till the time we don't actually get this LOI, letter of intent, other monies will not start coming in. But once they do, this fiscal year is going to be the most troubled part. After that, I see that there is going to be, even if we go back to IMF, there's going to be some kind of comfortable negotiations that can actually take place. Now, the problem with anybody who is a working class man and who actually believes in libertarian principles is, the irony is that on one side we have to argue, and I totally agree with whatever IMF has suggested. In the end, inefficiencies in the economy is the reason why we are in this bind. But on the other side, the fact is that when inflation goes up, when these austerity measures actually set in, I am also part of the working class that is equally vulnerable, if not more, than many depressed classes, because there is safety net for the work, very lowest of the cadres. But in the working class, there is none. So it takes some courage to actually argue for these reforms, and while knowing that you are going to be affected by this. But there is light at the end of tunnel. if we actually get all clear prescription from the doctor, doctor of last resort, that is lender of last resort, all our friends will start chipping in as well.
Right. Dr. Aqdas, there is also, of course, the concern that initially also when we were speaking with the IMF and in the aftermath of the devastating floods last year, there was a lot of discussion as this was, of course, part of an increased cost that Pakistan would have to pay for a long time in terms of how there is a rehabilitation, of course, and then the needs of so many people who got impacted by these floods. And then Pakistan has talked about climate change justice at various platforms and mentioned the fact that it is one of the most vulnerable countries due to climate change and climate-induced disasters. How much of this has been factored in the discussions that have been held with the IMF now and will be in terms of the policies that Pakistan would have to implement in the remaining fiscal year?
Well, that's a very good question, Sana. I'm not privy to the actual discussions that have taken place between the two sides as they sat across the table from each other, but I'm sure the Pakistani side must have brought this point to bear upon the negotiations as they were taking place, because you rightly mentioned that these most recent floods that Pakistan has faced were the worst floods that Pakistan has faced in the last 25 years. And according to damage and needs assessment, Pakistan needed um, a lot of money for reconstruction and rehabilitation. And the international conference that took place earlier earlier in the year, many countries came forward and pledged a lot of money, but we will have to see how much of that money is actually going to translate into actual sums of money coming into Pakistan. But to answer your question, I am sure the Pakistani side must have brought about or brought up this point when they were talking to the IMF when it comes to bringing this program back online.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Aqdas Afzal, for joining us and being a part of the discussion for this particular segment. And then, of course, with regards to the discussions we've had with the IMF. Farouk, regarding the various containers, of course, with imported items that are also adding to the problems that Pakistan is facing, how will we be able to deal with the issue of those important items? And then, of course, in the future, regarding imports as well?
Right. Sana, again, I want to actually point out the issue is that Pakistan's reserves are very limited right now, and they only cover 3 weeks of imports, right? Because of that, you have to be very cautious. Now, there are amazing debates that are going on. For example, today in an honorable court, this was remarked that if we stop the smuggling of foreign reserves from Pakistan, somehow it is going to ensure that Pakistan does not actually go bankrupt. And my humble submission is, that's why I keep on saying that get MSQRI from the Economist community, because you can stop leakage, but what about what has leaked already? You need cash in the system to ensure that you keep on importing. Because of that, at this moment, the circumstances are tricky. But the issue was complicated, Sana, because of our insistence on fixing or keeping the exchange rate fixed, right? The introduction of a cap that continued for past 4 months. Because of that, we saw emergence of a black market. And because of that, the biggest shot in the arm that we could have had, and that is the remittances in the country, that also was relegated to the black market or other informal channels like Hundi and Hawala, right? Because of that, the government of Pakistan was left high and dry. Now that we have removed that cap, and now we allow free floating dollar rate. Because of that, once again, people will start sending through the official channels because there's not any money to be made through illegal channels, right? Because of that, then we get, per month, per quarter, we get a lot of dollars, and we can actually ease up on imports as well. It is going to take, once again, few months before all medicines kick in, but I am sure that these things will stabilize. Meanwhile, whenever Politicians are talking about economy, especially in parliament, and whenever honorable judges want to negotiate, debate economics, please get some technocrats inside to help you out, because I understand economics is very tricky business and not everybody understands the full picture, and that complicates the policy direction of the country.
Absolutely. They need to get you on board. I
No,
hope
no,
that
no, I'm
they
not.
are able to figure that out. What
I'm
we
a
actually
journalist
need.
with a G. Yeah.
All right. This wraps up our discussion regarding the IMF, and of course, there are great hopes coming in with the fulfillment of this 9th review. And we hope that Pakistan is able to progress. These are tough times, but these are the challenges that the country has at this moment, and we hope that we overcome them. Now we're going to move on to our next segment, which looks at what is going on, unfortunately, in Turkey and Syria in the aftermath of the devastating earthquakes that have hit both regions. And because of that, we have seen that a large number of people have lost their lives. The death toll keeps on increasing every single day and is predicted to be even higher than it is at the moment. More than 20,000 people have so far lost their lives, and there are many more that are still trapped under the rubble and are being rescued. At the same time, of course, there is the freezing temperatures that the people have to face, and the numerous work regarding relief activities. There is, of course, a lot of support coming in from the international community regarding this particular disaster, and Pakistan, of course, is contributing in its own as well. But there is much in terms of understanding what is the need at the ground and what sort of measures can be taken to further help these people, and the kind of work that is required in both regions. So we'll be taking a look at this particular issue in this segment, and for this, we've been joined online by Mr. Sohail Sajid, who's the country head, Turkish Aerospace Industries. Thank you very much, Sohail, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. And let me first start with you with an understanding of what exactly has happened on ground in terms of the kind of disaster we're looking at. There is, of course, the numbers and the death toll that we keep on hearing, but perhaps the understanding in terms of the scale of the disaster is still something that the international community needs to understand, so that the relief efforts can match the needs of the people. So if you could highlight the current scale of the disaster, particularly in Turkey, for our viewers.
Thank you very much, Sana, for having me. Really, I'm feeling short of words to express my grief, first of all. As you have mentioned, our brother country and this catastrophic, this disaster, which, almost already you mentioned that more than 20,000 people and almost 15 million people have been considered like affected people at the moment. I was just a while ago talking to a few friends in Turkey, as well as some of them, they are from these cities got affected because of this disaster. So far, there is no single authority that can apprehend or can actually guess the scale or magnitude of this catastrophe. We can see that after every 4 hours, there is another 2,000 unfortunate deaths that they are counting at the moment. There was some chance, which the expert says that within 72 hours, some people are still can be rescued, which almost expired now this last 72 hours, and now there will be little chance. So once they will start as a whole, starting removing the rubble, then maybe very unfortunate to say, but definitely there will be discovered more dead bodies. Right now, as we have been talking, you are part of, and I'm really thankful to you in person as well, because maybe not many people knows that apart from, hosting this program, you are a focal part of this entire movement, I would say, that we are right now, our friends and colleagues, we are somehow organizing in Pakistan to, support and reciprocate to our Turkish brethren, Uh, what I just learned from my friends at the moment, not only, people which are still in this rubbles, those who are outside, they are in open sky. And, the temperature in some parts of these cities, -7, -10. So they are requesting at the moment to send, especially from Pakistan being, the first country to respond, some tents which can be used in extreme winter conditions. And apart from that, some dry fruits or lentils. I just want to convey through your, this channel and this program that we ourselves, we are putting up some relief camps, and we are collecting relief items together with the donations. So they are specifically requesting just to spare tents, blankets, lentils, and dry fruits. They
Right,
don't need
and
any.
Sohail Saab, you also mentioned earlier regarding the specific requirements of the tents as well. If you could also explain that in terms of the understanding of the people as to what is the need at the moment.
That's what I'm mentioning. I'm directly talking to the friends as well as those families which are right now in this crisis in these 10 cities. The scale, as we earlier discussed, it is 500 square kilometer area that has got affected because of this calamity. So, especially the tents and the heating systems, blankets, lentils, dry fruits. That is the, extreme. No other food items, no other items that we have been, generally people are trying to collect, and even they are reaching us to deliver these, relief items. But as I mentioned, some heating system, heaters, blankets, and, so on.
Right. So, Elsab, there's also, of course, the issue when we take a look at this natural disaster that, of course, there are numerous other crisis situations all over the world that the international community is dealing with. And unfortunately, so it seems that the international media keeps on wavering in terms of prioritizing their issues as well. And as time passes, we've seen in the past as well that many natural disasters lose their importance with a matter of time. What do you think of the way that this particular issue has been covered, and the way that it has been talked about in international media and all over the world, and the kind of response that different countries have given in this hour of need?
You rightly mentioned, Sana. We, to the level of acknowledging it, or showing solidarity, yes, we can say. But as far as coming practically to help, again, our country, whatever conditions we are going through, everyone knows, still we are the first country to respond. And uh, as we can say, the two special aircraft so far with full of these tents and relief items have reached our army personnel, which are really expert in this. One of my friend was telling me that in rescue, the Pakistan Army's role at the moment is really commendable. And, maybe few hundred people they have rescued in just last 48 hours from these rebels. International community, definitely they are paying their solidarity, but as far as sending the teams are concerned, not enough, I would say.
All right. So let's stay with us and I'll come back to you. Farouk, when we take a look at the way Pakistan has responded as well as other countries, we of course unfortunately have had similar experiences in the past, and we understand the kind of situation that arises in terms of such natural disasters. And because of that also, and otherwise as well, there is a lot of compassion on ground in terms of helping, and especially in times of need to our brotherly countries such as Turkey. But when we take a look at the way that there is a feel or a need to help the community, it sometimes is not matched enough by the capacity or perhaps the kind of coordination that is required on ground. How can we ensure that when we have aid coming in from all over the world and even from different regions coming together, that it reaches the right person, that it is coordinated, and that we are able to meet the requirements that in fact exist?
That is a very good question, Sana, because at this moment, many might be butted under rubble, as was pointed out earlier. And the outer world, when it is when you're sitting outside, you don't know the ground realities the way the common man on the street does. So what happens is that you end up trying to send perishable things that can actually get destroyed in transit or then in distribution. It actually takes me back to 2005 earthquake when I was working with an NGO, and what we tried to do, Sana. I remember when earthquake actually strikes, all communication channels are down, towers are down, and then communication becomes quite a hectic business. So what we tried to do was we negotiated with PEMRA and got some emergency radio stations there, so that coordination or transmission could take place, that where you can get food, where you can get all the supplies, clothes for that matter, medicines are going to be a humongous part of the relief as well. So all these things will have to be, people will have to be indicated where to go. And that is one thing that I could, off the top of my head, I could think of. But our experiment actually failed, because while we managed to get the towers and radio stations to the earthquake affected areas, the biggest problem was that our customs authorities did not allow the import of radio sets that we wanted to distribute among the people. Had that been there, the communication would have been much better, much easier. But that consignment kept on languishing at the ports for 2-3 years. After that, they said collect it, and we did not have any reason to do that. In Turkey, things are perhaps better in that way. But having said that, the items that Sohail Saab was actually mentioning is very important. Lentils cannot actually get destroyed, right? Similarly, when you talk about dry fruit, that also gives you nourishment and sustenance. Similarly, any heating items may be tent, because you have to be protected. And there are parts of Turkey where temperature in winters actually goes down to minus 44 degrees centigrade. So with that kind of an environment, tents and all the provisions that could go there should go there. And if there is better coordination, and the last thing which is very important, and this is an appeal to international community, because everyone, because of politics of President Erdogan, they keep on trying to, involve politics, and that is very sad. At this moment, the first thing is that the people of Turkey should get relief, right? Charlie Hebdo, or for that matter others, their pungent criticism can wait, for heaven's sake. Right now, let the people come out of this misery, and then we can talk about accountability and other concerns.
Absolutely. The issue of humanitarian needs is of utmost importance. And in the past also, we have seen that Turkey is one of the countries who have always stepped up and been the first ones to help Pakistan in the hour of need. And of course, we'd like to reciprocate that as well, and want to stand by the people of Turkey in this hour of need. So here, when we take a look at the way that Pakistan has been responding, I understand there's a lot going on in terms of efforts towards humanitarian aid and relief activities. But in terms of a national response as to how Pakistan in particular can contribute further towards the brotherly relations, what sort of issues and factors do we need to keep in mind? There are, of course, the needs, as you highlighted before, but in terms of things to be mindful of, as Farooq was mentioning, regarding the political dynamics, or in terms of the way that the people and the victims, in fact, need to be supported in this hour, what else can Pakistan do for Turkey?
Yes, very good question, Sana. Here I would like to mention something which, we have so many common friends in Turkey, and we are working in different perspectives with our brother country. When I'm talking to my friends, they are emotionally too much down, too much broken. So what I have been discussing with my friends and colleagues, with Pakistan, since we are unconditional brothers and friends, many things bind us, from our religion to cultural values and social norms and so on. So what they are requesting, that apart from this support, state level support in form of relief and otherwise, they are requesting, at the moment they need emotional, uh, how to put it, I mean, maybe rightly, they want some emotional support as well. So a couple of friends were mentioning to me that our families are into tears days and nights. People are unable to perform their daily jobs. So they are requesting, whatever you do, whether it is a debate in social media like this particular program is going on, or sharing something through social media which give them some strength emotionally to remain back in life as it was before this catastrophe. So this is one. Secondly, I would like to mention here a very important moment, a very important event that we plan today, together with Sana is part of it, and I would be really very thankful to the management of NUS University, the Honorable Lecturer, and the other team members. Uh, Again, Pakistan as a first country, we are going to hold a national conference for donors conference, we can call it, and where we are going to take pledges, We are inviting the entire leading industry, mega industry of the country, representation from Federation of Chamber of Commerce and Industries and local bodies, other multinational companies and counterpart institutions. So we are going to organize this conference, donors conference in NUST on 20th of this month. And I hope that will, provide some comprehensive approach, as well as this opportunity will create something good to, support our brother country.
Absolutely. And Sohail Sahab, of course, all of these efforts are really welcome, and with the support of the Turkish Aerospace Industries and the embassy as well, we are grateful that we are able to do such measures and take care of the kind of needs that the people of Turkey have. And of course, we'll also be sharing with our viewers where they can help and contribute, and of course, the kind of support that they can provide. Thank you so much for your time and being part of the discussion. And we hope that we are able to help the people of Turkey in this hour of need, and Pakistan can still contribute even further when we take a look at this particular issue, and then of course with the way that the entire region has been affected, including Syria as well. Thank you, Farouk, for being part of the discussion as always. That's all that we have from the debate at the moment, and we'll continue with our discussions. Have a nice weekend. We'll see you Monday.